Parenting a child on the autism spectrum, it's a journey, that's for sure, with unique joys and challenges.
It is.
And I mean, we could talk for hours about all the ins and outs, but today we're doing a deep dive.
Yeah.
Focused on everyday hurdles and how we can, use evidence-based approaches
Right.
to make things a little smoother for everybody.
So we're going to break it down into really practical solutions, stuff you can actually use. Think of this as a toolbox.
Ooh, I like that.
Not a one-size-fits-all manual.
Right, because every kid's journey is different.
Exactly.
So let's jump right in.
Let's do it.
One of the most fundamental things is communication.
Yes.
Right? It's the bedrock of, well, any relationship, but for kids on the spectrum.
Oh, it can be a real struggle.
It can.
And it's often the root of frustration for both the child and the parents.
For everybody, yeah.
But there's good news.
Okay, tell me.
Augmentative and alternative communication, we call it AAC,
Okay.
has really revolutionized how we approach communication barriers.
So tell me about AAC. Like, what are we talking about here?
We're talking about things like, the Touch Chat app, which basically turns your iPad into this amazing communication device.
Oh, cool.
Or picture exchange systems, PECs.
Oh, I've seen PECS in action. It's so cool.
That's what that is.
It's amazing. I remember reading about this family, and their kid was having meltdowns all the time.
Right.
Couldn't express their needs. And they started using PECs. And it was like, boom, a light switch.
Yes.
Kid could just point to these pictures, tell you what they want, no more frustration.
It's amazing how such a simple tool can have such a big impact.
It really is.
And of course, we can't forget the power of good old-fashioned speech therapy.
Right, the classic.
It's a classic for a reason. It's still so effective in helping kids develop those language skills.
Absolutely. So, we've talked about communication.
Feeling of unpredictability, that's really unsettling for a lot of kids.
I'll bet.
You can help, though, by creating a sense of order and predictability.
Okay.
Using visual supports, like schedules and timers.
Okay. Yeah, I've heard about that.
Imagine a visual schedule with pictures. Each picture shows a different part of the day.
I see.
It helps the child know what's coming next.
Okay, so it's like a roadmap.
Yeah, exactly. And, sometimes even a simple transition object can make a huge difference.
Like what?
A favorite toy? Something familiar and comforting during those tricky moments?
Right, like a little anchor.
Exactly. And we often see transitions and repetitive behaviors kind of going hand in hand.
How so?
A child might do the same thing over and over. It can be a way of self-soothing.
Okay.
Or maintaining a sense of control when things feel out of control.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So how should parents approach those repetitive behaviors? Is it about stopping them completely?
Not necessarily. It's more about understanding, why is the child doing this?
I see.
What need is it fulfilling?
Get to the root of it.
Yeah, and that's where ABA therapy comes in.
Okay.
ABA.
Applied behavior analysis, right?
That's right. And it helps us understand the why behind the behavior.
Okay.
And then we can, gently guide the child towards something more positive, more functional.
Okay, so I've heard a lot about ABA, but honestly, I think it's often misunderstood.
I think you're right.
Can you give us a little breakdown? Like, what are the basic principles?
Absolutely. So at its core, ABA is about understanding how behavior works and how the environment affects it. So we look at the antecedents, the triggers, the things that come before behavior, the behavior itself, and then the consequences, the things that happen after. And by sort of tweaking those things, we can reinforce the good stuff.
Okay.
And reduce the things that are challenging or disruptive.
So it's not about punishing a kid or forcing them to stop. It's about understanding what's driving it.
Exactly.
And finding other ways for them to meet those needs.
You got it. It's about creating a supportive environment where the child can thrive.
I love that.
And remember, ABA isn't one size fits all. It's got to be individualized, tailored to that specific child's needs.
That makes sense. Okay, let's shift gears for a sec. Let's talk about sensory sensitivities.
Yes.
So common in kids on the spectrum. And it's not just, being sensitive to loud noises or bright lights. Sensory processing differences can affect all 5 senses.
They can.
Sight, sound, touch, taste, smell. And they can show up in so many different ways. From like really seeking out certain sensations to like completely avoiding others.
Absolutely.
So what can we do? What are some strategies for managing those sensory sensitivities, especially like in the middle of a meltdown?
So creating a sensory-friendly environment at home can be really helpful.
Okay, how?
So think Noise-canceling headphones, weighted blankets, maybe even like a little calm-down corner.
Oh, yeah. I like that.
Right, with fidget toys and soft textures. Just a place to escape.
That sounds amazing, especially during a meltdown.
Yeah, it can make a world of difference.
So it's not just about reacting to meltdowns, though, right?
Right.
What about proactively helping kids develop coping mechanisms?
So there's sensory integration therapy, SIT.
Okay.
And that can help kids learn to process sensory information better.
I see. So a trained therapist can figure out what a child needs
Yeah.
and, like, create a custom program to work on those challenges.
Exactly.
I think a lot of parents struggle with meltdowns and tantrums, especially when they happen in public.
Oh, it's tough.
Right.
Yeah, embarrassing, emotionally draining.
For everyone involved.
For everyone. And it's important to remember, meltdowns are often a form of communication.
Okay.
The child's trying to say something, but they don't have the words
Right.
or the emotional regulation skills to do it in a different way.
So it's not about, like, punishing them for having a meltdown.
No.
It's about helping them develop those skills.
Exactly. Things like deep breathing exercises,
Oh, yeah.
yoga, even mindfulness.
Those can help kids manage those big emotions when they're feeling overwhelmed.
Exactly.
And I've heard about social stories being helpful.
Oh, yeah. They're great for explaining emotional triggers.
So what is a social story exactly?
They use really simple language and pictures
Okay.
to explain social situations and how we react to them.
Gotcha.
You know, like why you might feel a certain way and what you can do about it.
Oh, that's cool. It's about, like, giving them the language to understand their emotions and then manage them. Right.
Exactly.
Okay, let's talk about something I think a lot of parents can relate to, even if their kids aren't on the spectrum.
Okay.
Picky eating and sleep problems.
Ah, the classic parenting struggles, right?
Universal struggles, yes.
Look, you know, these things can be even more pronounced for kids on the spectrum.
I bet. So what does the research say about tackling these issues?
Well, with picky eating, patience is key.
I've heard that before.
You've got to gradually introduce new textures and flavors.
Right.
But don't force it.
Okay.
Getting the child involved in meal prep can help.
Oh, that's a good tip.
Makes them more interested in trying new things.
Makes sense. What about sleep? Like, what do we do when we've tried everything and they're still wide awake?
Consistent bedtime routine is crucial.
Okay. Yeah. I can see that.
You want to signal to the body it's time to wind down.
Makes sense.
Limiting screen time before bed also helps.
Because of the blue light, right?
Exactly. It messes with melatonin.
Right.
And sometimes, you know, behavioral sleep interventions like bedtime fading can be really effective.
Bedtime fading. What is that?
It's basically shifting bedtime later,
Okay.
little by little,
Okay.
to help the child fall asleep easier.
So the idea is to make sure they're actually tired when they go to bed.
Yeah. You don't want them lying there awake for hours.
No, nobody wants that.
Okay.
Okay, let's move on to social interaction.
Yes.
This can be such a hurdle for kids on the spectrum.
It can.
All those complex social rules and, like, unspoken cues.
It's tough.
It's like a foreign language sometimes.
It is. But just like any language, it can be learned.
Okay, so how do we help them?
Social skills training and peer-mediated interventions are really effective.
So break it down. What are those?
So social skills groups, they provide a safe space for kids to practice interacting.
Okay.
Yeah, they might role-play different scenarios.
I see.
Learn about body language, facial expressions, how to start conversations.
It's about giving them the tools and the confidence to navigate those situations.
Exactly.
And then peer-mediated interventions. What are those?
So you pair a child on the spectrum with a typically developing peer.
Okay.
And that peer acts as a role model.
I see.
You know, shows them the ropes.
Okay, cool. It's about creating those natural opportunities for interaction and learning.
Exactly.
Now, we can't avoid this topic, right? We have to talk about aggressive behavior.
Right.
Which can be a very real and concerning issue for some families.
It can be.
What are some effective ways to address that?
One approach that's really promising is functional communication training, FCT.
Okay, FCT.
And the idea behind FCT is that aggression is often a form of communication.
Okay.
The child is trying to express something,
Right.
a need or a frustration, but they don't have the tools to do it appropriately.
So we need to give them those tools.
Yeah, give them other ways to communicate those needs without resorting to aggression.
And what does that look like?
FCT teaches kids to replace those aggressive behaviors with, more functional ways to communicate.
So, like, using their words.
Yeah.
Pictures, sign language, whatever works for them.
Exactly.
I love that so many of these solutions are about empowerment
It's true.
It's about giving kids the skills they need to navigate the world.
Absolutely. And there's a whole range of unique solutions out there.
Oh, yeah. Tell me more.
So, for example, many kids on the spectrum have obsessive interests.
Yes.
Right.
And instead of trying to, stifle those interests, we can use them
Exactly.
for learning and growth.
Exactly. So it's about finding that balance. Let those interests flourish,
Okay.
but make sure there's variety and, structured time limits.
Right. So, if a kid's obsessed with dinosaurs, you could, incorporate dinosaur facts into their math problem.
You got it.
Or use dinosaur figures for imaginative play.
Exactly.
Okay, another area where I think our thinking is evolving is eye contact.
Yeah.
Forcing eye contact can be so uncomfortable
It can.
for some kids on the spectrum.
Yeah, it feels intrusive, overwhelming.
I've heard it described as like someone staring into their soul.
Yes, exactly. And it's not always necessary for real interaction,
Right.
It's more important to build comfortable communication.
Okay.
And that might mean finding other ways for a child to engage.
Like, what do you mean?
Some kids might prefer to look at an object near your face
Okay.
rather than directly into your eyes.
So it's about respecting their sensory preferences.
Exactly.
Okay. And of course, there's the screen time challenge.
Oh, yes.
Right. A struggle for so many families, but especially tough, I think, for kids on the spectrum.
Right.
Because they might be drawn to, the predictability and the visuals of screens.
It's true. But there are strategies for managing it.
Okay, good.
Setting clear limits with visual timers can really help.
Okay, so they know how much time they have left.
Exactly. And then offer some appealing alternatives, things that aren't digital.
Right, right. So make those other activities just as engaging as screen time.
Exactly. It could be building with Legos, playing a board game, going for a walk in nature.
I love those ideas.
Find things that really capture their interest. Create a healthy balance.
Okay, great tips. As we're talking about all these solutions, I'm noticing a theme here.
What's that?
Empowering independence.
Yeah, you're so right. So many of these strategies, whether it's visuals for instructions or slowly changing routines or using their interests to encourage play, it's all about that. Building independence.
Giving them the tools and the confidence to do things for themselves.
Exactly.
Okay, there's one safety concern we need to address head on because it's so important. Elopement.
Right.
It's a scary thought for any parent.
It is.
But for families of children on the spectrum, it can be a constant worry.
Absolutely.
So what can parents do?
Yeah.
How do we prevent elopement and keep our kids safe?
So there are several things we can do. First, secure the home environment.
Okay, like how?
Alarms on doors and windows, child-proof locks.
Right. Practical stuff.
Yeah, fencing the yard.
Makes a big difference.
Right.
What about when they're out and about out in the community?
That's where something like a GPS tracker can give you peace of mind.
Okay.
You can also use social stories to teach kids about safety rules.
Right.
The importance of staying with a trusted adult.
It's about a multifaceted approach then.
Right.
Combining those safety measures with proactive teaching.
You got it. And we can't forget ABA therapy.
Right.
It can help us understand what triggers elopement and teach the child other ways to cope.
Okay, that's reassuring. It's important to talk about how stressful that can be for families.
Yeah, absolutely. It can be incredibly stressful, even traumatic. Not just for the child, but for the whole family.
Right, I can imagine. It's like this constant fear, this feeling of never being able to relax.
Exactly. You're always on edge. So beyond the safety measures, what can families do to cope with that anxiety, to create that feeling of security?
Yeah, that's a good question. What can they do?
Well, first of all, remember, you're not alone. There are support groups specifically for families dealing with elopement.
Okay, so connecting with others who get it.
Yeah, it can be so validating and empowering to know you're not the only one going through this.
That makes sense. What about other resources? Any other strategies you recommend?
I always tell families to have a safety plan, something concrete.
So what does that look like?
It could include things like having a recent photo of your child handy, telling your neighbors and local businesses about your child's tendency to elope, teaching them how to identify safe places if they get lost.
So being prepared.
Yeah, practical steps that can make you feel more in control.
Okay, good advice. Shifting gears a bit, I know another common challenge is understanding and responding to social cues.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
All those subtle things that, neurotypical folks seem to just pick up on.
It's like there's the secret language of social interaction.
It really is.
And it can be hard for kids on the spectrum to understand it.
It can. So how do we help them?
Visual aids are amazing for this. Think social stories.
Oh, yeah, right. We talked about those earlier.
Yeah, but this time with pictures and simple explanations of, like, common social situations.
So, like a story about how to greet someone.
Exactly. Or ask for help. Or understand facial expressions.
Making those unspoken rules more explicit.
Yeah, making them accessible.
I like that.
And you can also try video modeling.
Oh, interesting. What's that?
You show short videos of people interacting in different situations, point out the important cues and how to respond.
Oh, I get it. So they have a real-life example to learn from.
Exactly. And it plays to their strengths, because many are visual learners.
Right, right. Okay, let's talk about executive functioning skills.
Oh, yeah. Those are tough for a lot of kids on the spectrum.
They are. What is executive functioning exactly?
It's like your brain's air traffic control system. It helps us manage time, plan, organize, prioritize, stay focused.
I need to work on my executive functioning, honestly.
I think we all do. But for kids who don't have those skills fully developed, it can be really overwhelming.
I bet. So how can we help them?
Structure, 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 visual schedules, checklists, routines.
Okay, yes, I've heard that.
It just helps create predictability and break down tasks into smaller chunks.
So instead of saying, like, clean your room, you'd say, first make the bed, then put your toys away.
Exactly. Give them those external supports until they can internalize the skills.
I see. So not doing it for them?
Right, but giving them the tools to do it themselves.
I like that approach. And, one thing that I think a lot of parents can relate to, whether their child is on the spectrum or not, is dealing with fears and anxieties.
Yeah, it's so hard to see your child struggle with fear.
It is. And for kids on the spectrum, those fears can be so intense.
Yeah, and they can last a long time.
Right. What are some of those fears?
Could be loud noises, certain textures, social situations, even everyday objects.
So what do we do? How do we help them overcome those fears?
Gradual exposure therapy can be really helpful.
What is that exactly?
So the idea is you slowly introduce the child to what they're afraid of.
Okay.
But you do it in a safe and controlled environment.
So baby steps.
Exactly. Like, let's say a child is terrified of dogs.
Okay.
You could start with pictures of dogs, then maybe videos,
Okay.
then seeing a dog from a distance, like across the street.
I get it. You're slowly increasing the exposure.
Right. And always, always pair it with praise and positive reinforcement for being brave.
Creating positive associations.
Yes, building their confidence little by little.
And working at their pace.
Absolutely. Never force them to confront their fear before they're ready.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, what about when a child seems to lack motivation for social interaction, They'd rather be alone.
Yeah, that can be tricky.
It can, especially when we're trying to encourage social skills development.
It is. And it can be confusing for parents.
It is. So where do we even begin? If they're not motivated to interact, what do we do?
First, we need to understand why. Why are they not motivated?
Okay, yeah, find the root cause.
Exactly. Is it overwhelming for them? Are they anxious about making mistakes? Do they just prefer to be alone?
So many possibilities.
There are. And once you understand the reason, then you can tailor your approach.
Okay, that makes sense.
One thing that often works is incorporating their special interests into social activities.
Oh, I love that idea. So, like, if a kid loves trains, take them to a train museum for a play date.
Exactly. Or maybe encourage them to join a model train club.
So smart. You're connecting their interests with social opportunities.
Yes. And you're making those interactions fun.
Right. Not something to be afraid of.
Exactly. As we're talking about all these challenges and solutions, I just think about how resilient these kids are. And their families.
They are.
I mean, they face so many obstacles.
They do.
But they find ways to adapt and grow and thrive.
It's inspiring. It's a good reminder that there's so much more to these children than their diagnosis.
Absolutely.
They have unique strengths and talents. They bring so much to the world.
They do. And it's our job to create an environment where those strengths can shine.
I love that. Potty training, for example.
Yeah, potty training, definitely a challenge for a lot of families.
It can be stressful for everyone.
Definitely.
Right.
And there's no, magic solution, unfortunately. But, there are evidence-based approaches that can help. Visual supports, for instance.
Visual supports. Okay. Like what?
Like a potty training chart with pictures, that can be really effective. And breaking down the process into smaller steps, we call that task analysis, makes it less overwhelming for the kid.
Right. So make it clear, predictable, and I guess rewarding.
Exactly. Celebrate those little wins
Mm.
and, avoid punishment or shame. That just makes it harder.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, what about play skills? I know some kids on the spectrum might have trouble with that.
Oh, absolutely. Some kids get stuck in repetitive play, or they struggle with imaginative play.
And play is so important, right?
It is. It's crucial for development. It's how kids learn about the world, how they develop social skills, how they express themselves.
So how do we help them? How do we encourage more varied and engaging play?
Start with their interests. What does the child love?
Okay, use their interests. Got it.
So, like, if they're obsessed with dinosaurs, bring in some dinosaur figures.
Yeah.
And show them different ways to play, act out scenes, build habitats, tell stories.
Love that idea. You're tapping into what already motivates them.
Exactly. And remember, play should be fun. It should be child-led. We don't want to force them to play a certain way. We just want to create opportunities for them to explore.
I think another thing that a lot of parents struggle with, whether their child is on the spectrum or not, is like getting kids to follow instructions. Sometimes it feels like you're talking to a wall.
Oh, tell me about it. It can be super frustrating for everyone.
It can. So what are some strategies that actually work?
Well, first, make sure your instructions are clear and concise. And age-appropriate, of course.
Makes sense.
Visual aids can also help, especially for kids who are very visual learners.
Okay, so like picture cards or gestures.
Exactly. Make it concrete, make it visual. Don't just rely on words.
Okay. Any other tips?
Break it down. If it's a complex instruction, break it into smaller, more manageable steps.
So instead of saying, get ready for bed, you might say.
Okay, first, put on your pajamas, then brush your teeth, then pick a book for bedtime.
I like it. Like a roadmap.
Exactly. And don't forget the positive reinforcement. When they follow the instructions, acknowledge their effort, praise them, it goes a long way.
Totally agree. Okay, another challenge, rigidity. Resisting any changes in routine.
Oh, yeah. Kids on the spectrum often thrive on predictability.
It's like their world feels safe that way.
It does. Any change, even a small one, can throw them off.
So how do we help them be more flexible?
Give them a heads up. Whenever possible, tell them about the change in advance.
Okay, preparation is key.
It is, and use visuals like a calendar or a countdown chart. It helps them see it coming.
So they're not caught off guard.
Right. And when the change happens, acknowledge their feelings, validate their experience, let them know it's okay to feel a little off.
I know this is hard, that kind of thing.
Exactly. Just a little empathy can make a big difference. So we've talked about specific challenges, but what about the bigger picture? How do we help these kids reach their full potential?
Yeah, that's what it's all about, right?
It is. I think we have to start by recognizing that every child is an individual.
With their own strengths, their own challenges, their own way of learning.
Absolutely. Celebrate neurodiversity, appreciate the gifts they bring.
I love that.
And create an environment where those gifts can shine.
Okay, so what does that look like in real life?
Well, in school, it might mean having an individualized education program, an IEP, tailored to their needs. Maybe assistive technology, sensory breaks, accommodations for their social and communication differences.
Okay, that makes sense. What about outside of school?
It's about belonging. It's about acceptance. Give them opportunities to do things they enjoy, to build relationships, to be part of the community.
It's about seeing the potential, not just the diagnosis.
You got it.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive. I'm feeling hopeful and inspired. There are challenges, yes.
But it's so worth it.
So for everyone listening, think about this. What's one small change you can make to better support a child on the spectrum in your life?
Remember, progress, not perfection. Celebrate the small wins. Embrace the journey. And never underestimate the potential of these amazing kids.
And remember, you're not alone on this journey. There's help out there.
Absolutely. We hope this deep dive has given you some new ideas and a little boost of hope. Keep learning, keep advocating for these kids.
That's it for this deep dive, but keep exploring.